I'm John Seacott, executive editor of the Brewer Magazine. Welcome to another edition of the Brewer Magazine podcast. Make sure you're following along by subscribing on YouTube or Spotify. And of course, you can follow us at brewermag.com all throughout the week as well. Well, the American craft brewery community is starting to embrace non-alcoholic beers a lot more. And as many are starting to package and sell their own NA brands as well. Maybe you're one of them, or maybe you're looking into it. Of course, there's a lot of intricacies that go along with getting an NA program up, especially a solid one. How do those tasting panels work? What sort of equipment do you need to even get started? And how important is the science behind the brew? And we're joined today with Peter Cronin, the quality manager at AleSmith. Peter, thanks so much for joining us here on the Brewer Magazine podcast. We appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Well, it's been a few years for you at AleSmith. I mean, kind of talk about your experience. You've kind of always been a part of the quality department. How have you seen what AleSmith as a brand has done quality-wise and being able to build, and how you've been a part of that?
Yeah, I did do the UCSD brewing program, and this was my first job out of that. I started as a quality tech, and then I moved up quality analyst, and now quality manager. It's still a one-person quality department here. We're still a fairly small operation, but it's cool. You could see the lab behind me. Just every year, just slowly growing it out, being able to test for more things, and being able to really look and view our beer with more than just a sensory aspect. Just put numbers to that as our raw materials change, as our senses change, as our customers want something different. It's always nice to have some equipment.
Well, today we're talking a little bit about something new. It's not beer, it's brew in NA,
Correct.
Non-alcoholic beers. It's cool to see that craft breweries are adapting and changing to the market needs. But of course, it comes with a fiscal responsibility as well, a quality responsibility, and kind of lead us through the timeline and why AleSmith wanted to get into NA beer production.
Basically, everyone on the brewing team has been to Europe, or even in South America. Other countries just do NA so much better, and it's always an option at a bar, at a restaurant, where if you want to have a break, you can do that, and it tastes really darn good. So we've been noticing, going to beer science conventions and things, that the science behind and the equipment behind making an NA beer has just gotten better and better and better. And you're able to create a product that more resembles true beer. And so we got a budget. This is one of our first big projects where we had a timeline and a budget. And it took us 18 months, multiple pilot batches on our pilot system. And we also had to purchase equipment for that. Of course, a pasteurizer. But it was cool. We tried out some different methods, and have figured out one that definitely works for us and creates some awesome products.
And like you said, that's pretty much where I was going to ask where you guys got inspiration from, because the number one thing is that I think a lot of small breweries that think about it are judging it against other North American NAs. And going to Europe and South America, it is such a different quality, flavors, technique. I'm sure. I mean, did you guys learn from them? Like, actually got in the weeds with them and talk to people, or was it kind of an experimentation on your own? Where'd you guys get the knowledge to be able to make sure you're doing what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I spoke to. What's cool about being a quality manager is the science community in beer is still very, very collaborative. And there are always aspects, especially with NA, where people kind of keep things close to their chest and don't talk. But I was able to talk to quality managers of breweries in Europe, and they were able to lead me through some processes that they've tried out. And it's awesome being able to have someone that's already kind of worked on their process, and give us a little leg up into making it ourselves.
Yeah. Well, you kind of talked about some of the equipment for you guys, but pasteurizer number one, are there other things that you guys have had to look into and maybe even add after the fact because you're like, nope, I think we do need that? I mean, what are some of those first pieces and what are some of those advanced pieces that you guys have liked to get into?
Definitely for safety's sake, for sanitation's sake. We already had an autoclave on site, so whenever we used to have separate parts, hoses, clamps, and everything for a lot of our beer for barrel aged or sour product. Now we just have a big autoclave where we can not have those separate parts. We can keep using the same tri-clamps and gaskets and stuff. So that's great because I know after pieces are autoclaved that nothing's growing on there. Everything is dead. Our product either way won't be infected. So luckily we already had that. And then because there is a little bit of sugar left over in our NA and in most NAs, pasteurizing is key. I've been trying to get people to realize that craft brew NA is really more like milk or orange juice. It does have some things on its side more than those products where it's carbonated, so it's anaerobic. It's usually pressurized, and it's a pretty low pH. But without that alcohol, a lot of things can happen.
Yeah. And, I'll start sipping on some of these. You guys were nice enough to send beforehand a Speedway NA. So, as always, I like my, and these came out of the fridge just a little bit ago, so I like my my dark beers a little warmer. So I'll let that get a little up to temperature first. But while I get this crack in, and just looking at the packaging, I think the number one thing is it all canned? Can you get, because I know there's been this discussion of keg NA, packaged NA. I mean, how do you guys go about that?
So everything is canned now. We did start out with draft NA in the tap room, but we only have so many taps, and if a product is canned, might as well just serve it in the can. And we could keep those lines extremely, extremely clean and swap them out ourselves. But what's hard about NA, I'll crack one too.
All right.
Cheers. With craft NA draft, that's probably our next big project, is figuring out how to do that. The Heineken system is kind of the gold standard, where basically their tap line comes with the keg. And therefore they sterilize that at their facility. You get the keg, you kind of tie it into the draft handle, and it's ready to go. So there are some systems out there that we've been looking into, but it would be really cool to have draft NA in a bar around town.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like that next innovation. But like you said, if you got a pasteurizer, you might as well be canning. You're going to be canning it anyway. Might as well just crack a beer, pour it in a glass, and then I guess that's kind of goes into, since we're already drinking the beer, and I might as well get to this question. And we're talking about IPA and Speedway. These are brands that you guys already have. Was it a discussion at the beginning, and like you said, in those 18 months of discussions and planning and doing some experiments and stuff, being able to go, well, we need to make this taste like AleSmith IPA. We need to have this taste like Speedway Stout. Or do you say, let's start clean and just come out with a dark beer and a light beer at the beginning? I mean, was that a discussion, and how did it win out to what you guys did?
AleSmith IPA and NA IPA is not a version of AleSmith IPA. No. Okay. So that is a separate product. What we wanted to create an IPA, NA IPA that we would like to drink. However, Speedway, we are trying to, the name itself, the brand itself is so big. We are trying to recreate an NA version of Speedway Stout. And I think we did pretty darn awesome with that. But Speedway and NA IPA is a product for us. Sometimes we catch ourselves. Yesterday was Sunday. We got Monday coming up, and we might be drinking with some friends. So we made a product that's 75 calories. That, hey, every other pint of craft beer, we sub in an IPA, an NA, and helps us get through the Sunday. Or if you're doing a month off on the wagon and or a week off, whatever you want to do, we could go back to this 75 calorie product whenever in those 18 months when we started testing a lot of NA product out there, there was one time I remember our president coming into our sensory panel and he was like, why am I gaining weight having these NAs? Like, I'm not drinking, but I'm gaining weight. And I had to explain that a lot of them actually have more calories than a normal beer. So we tried to counteract that with this product.
Very nice. And when it comes, okay, so at least this IPA, you guys get to create a flavor profile that you want.
Yes.
Is it anything close to any of the IPAs in your regular beer portfolio, or is it something that you guys found to be a niche that has a different flavor profile to it?
Yeah, it's a hybrid, I would say. The malt is very, very light, so it's more like a modern IPA, not like classic AleSmith IPA. So we do have a year-round modern West Coast called Party Tricks. So it is somewhat like that in the malt side, but the hops aren't the same. With this IPA is pretty El Dorado heavy, which we find lovely. Whereas Party Tricks has some really cool new hops in it that are like strawberry and tropical. So this contains El Dorado's like slightly resiny, slightly citrusy, all around just a good hop to have in an NA, I think.
Yeah. I'm having a hard time not chugging this completely because it's so easy drinking.
It's so light.
It's got a great flavor. It's the ones that, and I wanted to know this, like when it comes to sensory and finding flavor for you guys, is there a completely different when you're putting sensory panels together, you're tasting through these, doing the quality checks, making sure consistency is there. The flavor, are there different things that you're looking for in an NA versus a regular beer that you guys are putting out? Like, how does that checklist differ?
Yeah, so we have our sensory panel once a week. It's right behind me on this table with 6 people. And even for any Speedway, I have to always put it at the beginning of the panel. Even something as bold as that, because if we try that next to normal Speedway, your brain does this thing where if you sip this enough, if you start having 2 sips, 3 sips, 4, keep going, it turns into Speedway Stout. It's your brain just does that. It's so cool. And if you have a Speedway right after that, it's far too alcoholic. It was actually an experiment that I did at the World Brewing Congress in front of Heineken. We had a regular Heineken 0.0 in front of us and Heineken regular ABV, and we were trying for half the presentation 0.0, and your body just kind of gets used to it. And then, hey, I am drinking a beer without any alcohol. And then we swapped over to Heineken regular, and it smelled like vodka to me. It was wild.
That is crazy. And I'm not going to, just because it's a Monday morning for me, or Monday morning for you, Monday afternoon for me. I won't be doing the side-by-side, but you guys did send a 6-pack, so I do want to be able to go back, and I'm going to go grab a Speedway from my local store, and I want to have back. Me and my wife do stuff on the side just for like my own Facebook page for fun, where we, I get her involved in drinking beers and stuff with me, and she was like, "We need to do this. Like, this will be a lot of fun." She's a Speedway fan, so I think she's looking forward to trying this. In fact, I got to save her some of this can because she wants to have it while she's in her middle of some meeting. Doesn't want to be a part of. But yeah, now I opened up the AleSmith or the Speedway NA craft brew, and yeah, the roast notes are there for sure. The one thing is, like, I know it's balanced when it comes to the regular stout, but being able to not miss it, like there's a balance here, even though there's no alcohol. I think some people are like, well, you don't need the alcohol. Alcohol does deal with a part of what a beer tastes like.
Totally.
And I think that's at least the early craft versions of NA. It was so apparent and missing. Like, it was great that people were trying to get into it, but how has that changed over the years? Like the fact that it seems like it's there's been more science behind it, like you said, being able to mimic or at least make it not feel like you're missing something when you are drinking it. How has that changed?
Yeah, I think any of those science conferences or people putting out papers or talking about new methods or very simple natural additives you can add in to lower, if say you're doing the yeast method instead of the membrane method, you can lower the sulfur that yeast puts out by putting in some tannin or something. By doing the membrane method, you're taking the alcohol out, but then you're going to miss probably some of those esters. So you can, and I know some big breweries do this, you can ferment your normal beer and add a little bit back in up to 0.5%, the legal limit, and get some of that actual true fermentation profile back into that beer. So it's cool what people are doing. Everyone's a little different. And going back to the sensory question, this version of NA Speedway, when we were trying the pilot batches and we were putting in normal amounts of coffee that we would put in full strength Speedway into this, the coffee was just not there at all. So we had to up the coffee almost double to balance out the malt profile. And that's just, there's no alcohol in there. Without that 12% alcohol, you have other things that are out of whack, out of balance that you need to figure out.
Was both of these at the same time? Did you guys start with IPAs and then, or kind of what was the genesis, and how have you guys gotten to having these two brands, beer, NA beers right now? Brews.
Started with IPA for sure. Wanted to release something going back to the like healthy aspect of NA, or something that you could swap out in between pints. And then there was a ruling that, yes, we would talk about calling it craft brew or an NA brew instead of beer. But there is also a ruling that you can't use certain style names. So we already had the can developed for NA Speedway Stout or an NA Dark Beer. And once that ruling came out, that guidance, we're like, oh no, we got to recreate Speedway. That's such a big brand already that we don't need to use Stout at the end of it. So it was a clever trick of our marketing department. So then we really had to mimic Speedway. So we went down that path.
Yeah. So it's non-alcoholic craft brew, but there's the Speedway right on it, which, yes, it's such a well-known name, the brand, that people know what they're getting when they see it.
Right.
So I think that helps. Having the word IPA on something like the IPA obviously helps as well, because especially the way you guys, it's not Party Tricks NA, it is NA. So marketing's a lot of it too in this whole aspect. I'm sure it helps bring in some consumers, but how has the consumers taken to it? I mean, what have you guys heard, whether it's just through peer numbers or if there's word at the brewery, like, this seems to be working? Are you guys seeing an increase in production? Is it still kind of too early to tell, like, how the consumer base is taking to it?
We are making it fairly regularly. So, and I'm just the quality person. I don't look at sales too much, but that means it's selling. It is cool to have it now at certain beer festivals. I get a lot of feedback from our salespeople that go to these festivals where, they're pouring 2 alcoholic beers, but then they have an NA on the side, and no one knows about that. Some people are just being introduced to NA beer, and they're coming back for more and more samples of it. In our tasting room, it does super well. Especially, we are kind of in the industrial part of San Diego. You have to drive here, so if you have a DD who still wants to have a fizzy drink in their hand that looks like a beer, tastes like a beer, they could have that. But I do love the marketing side of it. Our cans are, they have the full AleSmith branding, except all our cans are usually straight horizontal across that byline. Our marketing department made it a slant, so hey, that's a AleSmith NA brand.
That's awesome.
Clever.
One of the other things, what is the future for this? You guys have some successful brews out right now. Is there talk of more? Is there talk of just building up through the true brands? What do what kind of fun stuff do you want to be able to see, even if it's just a dream right now?
Yeah, so we have both our ales right now. We've been talking about, and we'll probably start some pilot batches of a NA lager, craft lager. And then our best selling beer, especially in town, is 394. It's a pale ale. It's a classic pale ale with some caramel malt in there. It's delicious. It's what you have at the ballpark, and it's my dream to have an NA version of that. That is kick ass.
Well, it's cool, and I think it's neat that a lot of breweries are starting to embrace this, even if it's not like the top 10 seller. It's a seller that brings in a different crowd or keeps a crowd around, like you said, having a DD, being able to sip on a few of them, and everyone else can still have their time to enjoy it. That might be a whole extra round or two of sales that you might not have gotten if that person wasn't there drinking that at that time. I think it's an important aspect, whether you can do it yourself, you can collaborate with someone, you can somehow be able to give those NA options to consumers in your tap room. Well, awesome. Well, Peter, I enjoy the time we had. I thank you for the beer. Brew, NA brew.
Yeah, NA brew.
We'll eventually just have that roll off our tongue, but we're still learning. It's new for us, so.
Yep.
Well, thank you very much, and we'll take care, and cheers.
Cheers.
Don't forget, you can always check on brewermag.com. You can also see us on YouTube and listen to us on Spotify. And don't forget daily updates on Facebook, Instagram, and X. I'm Executive Editor John Seacott for brewermagazine.com.